Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is games leaving the collection for March. We're going to be diving into a bunch of games with some more caveats than usual. There's always caveats. But before we dive into that, usual and typical disclaimer, I cover a lot of games. I play a lot of games. I review something like 250 games a year, and my collection size is only around 250 games, which means no matter how good games are, I do have to pick and choose the ones that I think resonate the most with me. That sometimes means a great game that I just reviewed does leave the collection a month later because I'm comparing it against other games and other experiences I have that I prefer. Other times it means that a game that I held on to for 4 months, hoping it would get played more, doesn't ultimately get played more, and I realize it's time for it to let go, which means please take this entire video with the general, healthy grain of salt that I try to keep not that many games in my collection. Well, not that many is relative when it's 250, and that means when I'm covering and playing and having a lot of games come through, even great games do have to go. This is not a bad games list, although I will tell you when I just didn't like a game. To that end, let's go ahead and start, not to that end, oh yeah, one more disclaimer, always forgot these things. Over on Patreon, I give away some of these games over on Patreon, not one of them. One of these games is not being given away, but some of these games will be given away over on Patreon. If you are a Patreon member, every single month I throw these videos up, and then higher tiers get a few extra games, and then lower tiers get like, one game, I think. Generally give away one game to any Patreon, and then a few games to the higher tier Patreons. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into this, starting off with, I guess, an easy one. Starting off with Tatsu. Tatsu is a small trick-taking game. I covered this in a roundup video. It's a fun little game. Works well either as a two-player experience or as a pairs experience. I enjoy what this does while not thinking that I'll play it compared to Ghost of Christmas, compared to The Crew, compared to Cat in a Box. There's a bunch of games in the trick-taking genre that I think are significantly more clever than what Tatsu brings to the table. This is cute, it's well done, but ultimately I've only so much space for trick-taking games, and this one does not make the cut there. From there we have another one, Deadly Dowagers. Deadly Dowagers, which is a charming theme. I really like the theme of this game. I thought it was very clever, very interesting, very different, and also I thought that the actual gameplay was very okay. I did not think the gameplay inspired. I thought it was fine. There was nothing wrong with the gameplay. But in a world full of games that are constantly amazing and impressive in different ways, and games that are constantly fighting to be the reason you should pay attention to it, I think the only real reason to pay attention to Deadly Dowagers is the unique theme. I think the gameplay is fine, and if you like the theme and the gameplay, this will be fine for you. But for me, the theme is not enough for me to say, hey, that gameplay inspires me in any way. The gameplay checks the boxes and it works well, and I had fun playing it. And I'm also ready to move on from it. There's no tears lost in the getting rid of Deadly Dowagers. It's fine. I enjoyed my plays of it, just don't need to keep it. From there, we're moving on to one that is actually an in-shrink game. This is Evolution Climate. Also, there's another caveat in this video. I'll be talking about that in a second, and it's partially inspired by, well, this and like 3 or 4 games on this list. Which is, for those of you who have paid attention to various things on the channel, I'll be hosting a convention from myself. I'm partnering with Level Up Events, I should say. I'm partnering with Level Up Events and we're hosting a convention in July called the Level Up Retreat. It's going to be July 14th through 16th, and I am hosting and being a part of that in many ways. Part of that is the fact that I am trying to source the board game library for the retreat and put things together, which has also meant that I have looked at some games on my shelf and thought to myself, you know what, I still kind of want to own that, but I'll temporarily throw it into the convention and just put it there. And then I kind of mentally have ownership of it, but also I don't need to keep it in my house, which is often a good starting point to getting rid of a game, but also a good way to get the game back if I change my mind. It's actually interesting. I was thinking of the fact that over at the Dice Tower, I believe Tom does this all the time, where they're like, okay, great, this game goes to the convention library, this game goes to the convention library, which is a fun little outlet for keeping games that you're not keeping. I like it. I'm going to be using that. And that also means that some games that I'm more on the fence about, you might see leaving a little faster. In the case of Evolution Climate, I really like this game. I also play it on the app. I play it on the app as is, and I think that for me, I actually have, what's the company? The company, Crowd D Games, they have their own Evolution game, and so that one intrigues me a bit, and so I still plan on trying that one. But overall, the Evolution system I've liked Evolution, I've liked Evolution Climate, I've liked Oceans. It's a general idea of playing cards in order to try to, make sure your species evolves and can take down your opponents more efficiently than the opponents can take down you. It's actually not about taking down your opponents, it's about getting as many points as possible, but sometimes eating your friends does mean more points. So I like the Evolution system, and because I've been playing Evolution Climate so much on the app, I got this in Shrink, and realized that I just play it on the app, and my physical gameplays are more reserved for other games that I don't have an app for. Don't get me wrong, there are some games, I'm talking about you, Feast for Odin, where I'll play it on Board Game Arena from today until tomorrow and still want the physical version. In the case of Evolution Climate, the app does a good enough job. I like it. It's a good game. It's probably a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I really enjoy what the game does, while also thinking that it can be a little chaotic at times. Climate introduces some new elements compared to the original Evolution that I think do enhance the gameplay, but ultimately I get what I need from it by playing it on the app. Speaking of A Feast for Odin, this next one is directly inspired by A Feast for Odin, and it's getting rid of Earth. And this is an interesting one. This is actually a game that I have all the playmats and everything here. This is a game that actually went on my shelf to own. Like, I put this on my ownership shelf that I was going to dive into it. I'm not confident it's a long-term game for me. To me, I talked about this in my review. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I like the system, but I am comparing it to games like Ares Expedition, to games like Terraforming Mars, and I prefer those games. And so I wasn't sure, is Earth a game that will or won't continue to grow and evolve for me over time? Will it hit the table? I don't know. And because of that, I put it on my shelf to continue to dive into it. And I'm getting rid of it now, with a caveat. I plan on getting this back at some point. Hopefully, probably, maybe, or just playing it more on conventions, or on Board Game Arena. Speaking of Board Game Arena, this is on Board Game Arena, and it's the kind of game that I think I'm going to continue to dive into it and play it there, and see whether it continues to hold up or not. Whether it's a game that I simply enjoy a lot. I give it a 4 to 5, I like it. Or whether it's a game where I'm like, I enjoy it a lot, but I'd rather play Ares Expedition, I'd rather play Terraforming Mars, I'd rather play Everdell, any of those game systems. The reason it's going now is because, speaking of Board Game Arena, speaking of A Feast for Odin, while playing a lot of A Feast for Odin, I've wanted to dive back into, this is going to bother me, Fields of Arl. Fields of Arl is a game that I played once a very long time ago, and I've been enjoying A Feast for Odin so much that I want to dive back into A Fields for Arl. And it's an expensive game. So I hopped onto Board Game Geek, I checked who has it for trade, and then I checked someone's trade list, and they wanted Earth. And I was like, you know what? Earth is really popular right now. I have all the premium stuff and everything else. So let's go ahead and try to trade for Fields for Arl because it's like an $80, $100 game. And so I'm trading for Fields for Arl. Fun fact, by the way, the person who traded with me is someone who watches my videos here and there. So if you do watch this video, thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to dive into Fields for Arl and I want to give it a long, I want to play a Fields for Arl a lot and see how it stacks up against a Feast for Odin for me. I know Feast for Odin is rated higher, but I still want to play Fields for Arl and see, do I want to own both? Not, I don't know. I have so many Uwe Rosenberg games. I keep getting them. I do love what they do. And so right now, Earth is leaving because it was on my shelf to keep, but it was a good trade prospect for Fields for Arl, and I want that more. I will be playing Earth more on Board Game Arena, and then possibly getting it back. I don't know yet. Again, I think well of it while it's being compared and fighting against Table Time from other games that I think I like more. With that, we're going to move on to the next one, which is Tragedy Looper. This was an easy one to get rid of, unfortunately, and not because I don't like it. I enjoy Tragedy Looper, but I enjoy it with the caveat that it's very hard to get people up and running in this game. I reviewed this on the channel, and basically I said, hey, I dove back into Tragedy Looper because I loved the original Tragedy Looper, and I wanted to give this a shot and see how the new one holds up. And it has all the good things and all the bad things that the original Tragedy Looper had. The original Tragedy Looper was a very clever game that was very confusing to figure out how to play the game. There's 2 rule books, so you're kind of learning it while then being thrown into the deep end of what is actually happening, like the scenarios on top of the rules. It's a bit of a mess to pick up. It's the kind of game that involves 2 to 3 plays under your belt before you really feel you know what's going on. And while I enjoy the puzzle that it gives you, I just don't have the interest in continuing to teach people the puzzle and get them up to speed on it. There are other deduction games that I feel show their brilliance sooner than that. I'm looking at you, Mind Management, if you want a hidden rule movement game, and I'm looking at you, I don't even know, what's a good deduction game? Tiwanuku, if you're looking for pure deduction, Tiwanuku, one of my favorite deduction games, which just showed up, by the way. I'm excited to dive into it. But anyways, that's Tragedy Looper. A good game, good system, ultimately a barrier to entry as far as the getting up to speed and feeling you have the game under your belt, versus other game systems has this one as an easy one to leave the collection. From there, and last on this side of the table, not last on the list, we have Namiji. Namiji from Funforge Games is a fun, light traveling game as you travel around the ocean in a little boat, picking up fish and making your panoramas and grabbing, I don't know, going crab hunting, I don't know what. You're doing a bunch of stuff in the game. I know the game, I just try to remember all the things you do. But when you go through this puzzle, you're basically trying to go on a journey, choosing the spots, and being mindful of the fact that the person in last always goes first, which means as you place things, you are trying to choose what you want most versus what you want more. And you're trying to figure out the efficiency of the actions, the trade-off of when to go a little few steps ahead, knowing your opponent was going to get 2 or 3 spots because you jumped ahead, versus when it's still worthwhile to you. It's a fun little game of trying to manage all that as you go around the board. It gives you a little puzzle. Ultimately, it's too light for me. It's a game that I enjoy, and it's too light. I don't feel the need to continue to dive into this one. I feel like 2 or 3 plays was all I needed to really get to see what this game has to offer. And with that, we move to the other side of the table, where we start with another one that was... Well, let's go ahead and show it to you and talk it over. This is Flamecraft. Flamecraft is a fun game, but a fun game that I never loved. It's just a fun game I always enjoyed. I like Flamecraft, and I think that, for me, it's the gameplay... The game weight of Flamecraft has always been light. Since I first covered it, it's been a lighter experience, and one that I think the art and the world building is top-notch. I think the little dragons are amazing. I have the little plushy dragons around over here, and I love those. But the actual gameplay is very much on the lighter side, at least as far as my own personal interest. To that end, this is a game that I've only really had lying around because my kids kind of like to play with the pieces and the miniatures, and they've played the game. I played the game with my daughter once, and she liked it, but she also doesn't ask for it. Overall, it's one that I'd only keep around because of my kids and or gateway experiences. I think this is a great gateway game. I think it has a wide appeal. I think the art pulls you in. The gameplay is simple and engaging. I think this is a solid gateway game that is too light for my own personal interest. I wasn't sure if or when this would stick around, and this is one that I was thinking would be a great choice as far as that convention I mentioned, where I think that it's good to have a game like this in the convention library. A light, simple game that you can pick up and, you know, just table at, visually appealing, all those good things. Also, why is it like the box picking up over here? I have to push these in. No, things are pushing out of the way. How does this even go? There we go. I fixed it. It's all good now. But yeah, this is the deluxe version of the game. I think it's going to make a great addition to the library, which is why it's easier for me to get rid of it a little early. Make no mistake, game weight, this is too light for me. The only question was do I hold on to it for, again, fit kids, family, gateway, all of that stuff. But then we move to two games that are not the easiest to get rid of, but easier. And this is going to be Sagani and Nova Luna. You see, Sagani and Nova Luna are part of a trilogy. Speaking of Uwe Rosenberg games that I own too many of, Uwe Rosenberg has Sagani, Nova Luna, and Framework. All three of them are simple games that have a puzzle of trying to put tiles down that both give you objectives and fulfill objectives, and the balance of how you match them all up as you do them determines who gets rid of all their tokens first and ultimately wins the game. That's the core puzzle of these games. For me, though, since playing Framework, I have found that I've dove into both Nova Luna and Sagani, and I found that I just rather play Framework. Now, to be clear, Nova Luna, I think, is almost directly comparable to Framework, and I think there's no reason to own Nova Luna if you can play Framework. Almost no reason. I just rather play Framework. I just think it's a better system, so a core puzzle. I do like the look of Nova Luna a bit more, but the core gameplay, I think Framework is simply better. Now, Sagani does give you an interesting puzzle as far as the way the tiles point to one another instead of adjacency, which does involve a different degree of how you think about it and how you approach it, and I do like that. With the caveat that I think the rest of the puzzle around it is just unnecessarily complicated as far as how you acquire tiles. Framework is brilliant in its simplicity and execution of a gameplay system that is present in these games, but is the easiest one to table. Part of me did want to keep Sagani, but I don't feel the need to. I think I'm going to primarily play Framework. I have Sagani and Nova Luna and Framework are all available on Board Game Arena. Nova Luna is available on Nova Luna is available on Board Game Arena, and Sagani, Nova Luna, and Framework are all available on Tabletopia, so online play is always an option for any of them if I find myself missing the gameplay that's there. As far as owning them, I think one is good enough. And for a while I thought I would own all three. It took diving back into them to kind of think that, no, Framework really did replace these systems for me as the ideal one in the system. From there we have another one that I'm getting rid of for like the fourth time in my collection, and this is Catan. Now this one has a caveat. Catan is a game that I've owned and then had for a long time, got rid of it, got it back with all the expansions, realized I wasn't playing it even though I liked the game and want to play it, got rid of it. I think it's only 2 times then. And then I got it back to a review for WSBG. The World Series of Board Gaming the World Series of Board Gaming, they have their event last year, they're going to have the event this coming year as well. And it's basically a competition for board games where you play 16 games, and the winner is, gets $25,000 and $40,000 totals of prizes given out, all that stuff. And last year, I had this goal of reviewing all the World Series of Board Gaming games on my channel. Just have I should have a review for every single one of them, because I was going there, why not? And so I got Catan back in order to accomplish that goal. And then I kept it because I like Catan and I kind of want to play it, but I don't ultimately end up playing it. I'm kind of surprised. Is this on Board Game Arena? I hope it's on Board Game Arena. Maybe I'll play Catan. Either way, point is that Catan stuck around because once I reviewed it, I was like, I'll put it back on the shelf. Maybe I'll play it. Spoiler alert, I have not played it. And this game is best with the Cities and Knights and with the other systems. It's a game that thrives with some of the expansions. I really, really like it. It's a good game, but it's a good game that does not get played. I don't know why. I should probably play it. I kind of want... Catan holds up. It holds up. If you have the expansions, it holds up. The exploration, the resources, the building, it's just a good game. I kind of want it all back. Either way, whether or not I get it back is immaterial because, at the very least, a decent board game library should have a copy of Catan somewhere, and so this is going to be going into the board game library as well. If I do get it back, Dear Lord, I should not get it back, but I kind of want to get it back. We're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. We're going to move on. We're going to move on. And speaking of moving on, we're moving on to a great game that I've played through enough and I'm ready to move on from, even though I didn't dive into the expansion yet. We have Relics of Rajavihara from Joe Slack. This is a solo game that basically gives you a bit of a, exploration kind of, you're moving around the board with certain rule sets as far as how to try to navigate those tiles and get the gems and kill your enemy and all that stuff, dropping giant blocks in them. It's a fun little system that's kind of very reminiscent of app-based games where you have a little puzzle of how you move around. I like the system, but I've played through it enough, and I find that it is both a rewarding solo experience while also feeling very much like I'm playing an app. And I almost would rather just play an app for what this game is doing. I think it's very good. I like it a lot. And I think it's brilliant how I managed to do that in a board game. Ultimately, I think the things I want to play, when I play a board game solo, I kind of want it to feel like a solo board game and not feel like a video game. It's one. Speaking of all this talk about Board Game Arena and playing games online, I think there's a fascinating conversation there around the nature of what a game feels like. Sometimes you're playing a board game online and it feels like a board game. And sometimes you're playing a board game and it feels like a video game or something else. And to that end, I just want to play things that feel like board games. That's my primary objective. Play things that feel like board games. And that's it. That's basically it. That's my goal. We have one more game to get rid of today, and that is going to be a big box one that you will see in another video. I'm still going to be talking about it today, though, because I think I'm definitely moving on from it. And this is Darkest Dungeon. With a caveat, let's talk about this one. So first of all, for those who have mentioned the whole Patreon giveaway stuff, this is not eligible for the Patreon giveaway. It's too much game, unfortunately. Speaking of which, some of these as well are not. Like Flamecraft is not. That's definitely going in the library. Some of these, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it over on Patreon. Earth's not, because it's being traded. But still, most of these games are still hypothetically available. Now with that, let's go ahead and talk about Darkest Dungeon over here. Darkest Dungeon is a game system that I have enjoyed what I've played, with a giant caveat. I played through the starting scenario. I like the game system, and I think the positioning and tactical, the use of abilities, the enemies, how you navigate all that, it provides a very compelling puzzle. It does. But it also gives you a ton of maintenance to get to that compelling puzzle that I just don't find rewarding. I think there's both a lot of grunt work in Darkest Dungeon, as well as a lot of rewarding gameplay. I think it has both. And for me, the problem is that's not good enough. I'm doing a video at some point. I don't know if it may have gone up by now. I don't know. At some point, sometime soon, or in the past, there was a video about me going through 40 campaign or scenario-based games that I need to pick and choose what's going to get my time and attention. 40 is too many. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm going to cut it down that much, but if I can cut it down by even 10, that's still an accomplishment, and I do want to cut that list down. And so I'm going to be going through a ton of these games and trying to figure out what I can realistically say I don't need to play. I'm not invested enough in, or I've enjoyed what I've seen of it, but not enough to weigh up against some of the best games I have in my collection. We're talking about playing Oathsworn or Gloomhaven or Wild Ascent or Primal over other game systems that I like but don't like as much, and so I have to make hard choices. And to that end, Darkest Dungeon is definitely leaving. The reason Darkest Dungeon is in this video compared to the others is I think it is the easiest choice for me from those, because a lot of those systems come down to the temptation that each one provides, and Darkest Dungeon is low enough that I think Darkest Dungeon I'd get rid of even without that video and that incentive. The other ones might just be a question of I have to make hard choices, versus Darkest Dungeon, since I've played it, since I've started it, I don't feel comfortable reviewing it. I haven't played it enough, but I also don't feel the need to continue to play it, knowing that I already see what I like about it, and see the parts that I don't like, and there's other games that I just like more. I think Darkest Dungeon is fine. I think if you like Darkest Dungeon, that makes sense. And for me, it's one that I'm ready to move on from. And with that, that is the games leaving the collection for March. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, reminder, the Patreon thingamajiggy, if you are a Patreon, some of these games will be given away. And past that, a reminder that, as usual, there are good games here. Some of these don't work for me, others work for me, and you just have to make hard choices. It's the nature of having a lot of games come through, and having a house that is just a house and not 3 houses. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.